Well, Red Deer, always great to see you again. Mayor Ken here with another after council interview or inquisition. I hope it's not an inquisition. I hope it's an interview, but just making light of the fact this morning that we are in one of my favorite places in the downtown this morning. And I speak of the Barbershop on Gates this morning. Celine Fraser and her wonderful staff, Trina, and so on, has been in the mayor's hair, if you will, for many years now. And it's just a treat to be here. I'm joined this morning by Deputy Mayor Lawrence Lee. Lawrence, always great to have you along, and so on. We're here to talk about the last couple of council meetings and so on. And we have the owner, the entrepreneur, the barber extraordinaire with us this morning, Celine herself. So Celine, always great to see you, especially when you're not cutting me with something.
Good to see you too.
And so on. Anyway, you have the chair, which is where you usually put me. So it's a nice treat to have you in the chair this morning and not me. So go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Council approved the second and third reading of the updated offsite levy bylaw. Can you explain what the offsite levies are and why this update was necessary?
You know, thank you for the question, Celine. I have to say that before I came on council, I really didn't have the understanding of what offsite levies were and how important they are to the city. But they're not just important to the city itself. They're important to the developers that work in our city. So simply put, offsite levies are the costs to developers when the city puts roads into a new development, puts streets into a new development, puts lighting, puts water, all of those kinds of things. So developers go into a parcel of land, the city supplies the services to that land, and then the developers repay the city for those costs over time. So it's an important piece of how development is done. It's an important piece of why properties costs what they do, what they typically cost, and so on. And it's a vital piece of financial relationship between the development community and the city itself. So I'll say every 5 years, I think it might have been 6 this year, but every 5 years they're reviewed to make sure that they're still relevant, that costs are equal, that costs are fair, all of those kinds of things. And that's why council undertook the review. And we landed on the bylaw that we did. So very important piece of work, and glad it's done.
Interesting. Councillor, the new bylaw sets the average offsite levy rate lower for 2025. What factors contribute to this decrease, and how might it impact the future?
Well, I think a key point there is as we grow, we benefit from economies of scale. So critical infrastructure that's put in place, we try to design it so that it's cities are not growing as a sprawling entity, but are concentrated and using the services that are piggybacked on other services. So the mayor spoke about how the city upfronts a lot of these costs, curbing, street lights, all of that, the designs of these neighborhoods and these districts. So the reason it comes down is because we learn how to run those more efficiently and effectively. Cost of services of things like simple water. We use basins now to look at how the city is set up and functioning. So if development is closer or farther away from a basin, it used to cost more money. There used to be attributed costs to getting that supply to that neighborhood or district. Now we've got it so that our city staff have planned ways of reducing those costs and the efficiency of getting those services in a more effective manner. We pass those costs on. They're front-ended costs that the developer benefits from. So we also benefit when those developments become more efficient.
Council repelled 2 policies, offsite levies and storm water management, Mayor, how do these repels align with the updated offsite levy bylaw? And what does this mean for developers and the city planning?
Well, the key in development is always predictability, or as close to predictability as you can get. Meaning, if the costs are known by developers, they can price their product, they can choose to develop a particular parcel versus another parcel, and so on. So that was one of the keys, that council looked at. So any time we get into rate setting or strategic planning around those factors, it's about consistency, it's about predictability, and that's really in a very high level way. That's really what we did here with the development community. And I will say thank you, Councillor Lee. I thought you added some great insight in your answer there. I will say the development community was very, very supportive of the actions that council took with this review of the whole issue of offsite levies and so on. Their costs have come down substantially under the new bylaw, which enables them to develop at less cost, and that in turn means less impact on the consumer when they're buying homes or renting premises or whatever the case may be. So it's about predictability, it's about consistency, and certainly, it's certainly about transparency, because the development community can certainly understand what the city's costs are. Citizens can see what the city's costs are, and everybody can plan accordingly.
The administration provided an update to the downtown parking system changes implemented in September 2023. Councillor, what feedback has been received from the community, and are there any planned adjustments based on the feedback?
Well, I'll tell you this, Celine, that's a great question, because it depends on what demographic that you refer to. So like any change in the community, the city has to basically look at the perspectives of such a diverse group of residents that come and use our parking system. The majority of the parking system is centralized in our downtown. It has been for a long time, I think since the 1930s, if I recall correctly, that parking has been part of the Red Deer system. Lots of feedback, good and positive and negative in some things, which brings me to the point that you asked. Any system that our city uses has to evolve, has to be responsive to the needs of the citizens and the residents that use that. We rely on that feedback. We're not the be-all, end-all. We are not the all-knowing, omnipotent power of the city. We are simply listening boards to ensure that the feedback that is coming from the people using our systems are implemented effectively and efficiently. Parking has been a challenge because of things like the delay in receiving product software updates and the feedback that has come back from the community, which is being implemented on a regular basis. Even now, there's, I believe, 7 more stations being put into specific zones to make it more accessible to those people that need it.
When does that happen? Excuse me.
Within the next month, I believe. Oh. Yeah, so by the end of May, that will happen. So there's lots of reasons. You could talk to one generation and another generation and another generation, and I mean that in a very innocent and good way. But and we will always look for different ways of things. How can we more readily respond from a customer service level? And that's what I think this council really is focused on, and how can we be better at delivering customer excellence to our community. And parking is a highlight, because so many people of so many diverse backgrounds and demographics have to adapt to a new way of doing things that has been, since the 1930s in our community.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. The Ad Hoc Economic Development Committee presented its initial findings and early recommendations on how Red Deer should organize its lead economic development efforts. Mayor, what are the key takeaways and how might they shape Red Deer's economic future?
Great question, and I'll get to that, Celine. Because of my personal connection here, forgive me for going back to the parking issue just a bit. I thought Councillor Lee hit all the high points here, and as you say, Councillor Lee, it's certainly guided by the demographic in many ways. In a situation that you find yourself in, and many other merchants in the downtown find themselves in, they're in an older, you cater. I mean, look at me. You cater to a little bit of a more senior clientele, making parking a challenge for your clients for sure. And this is something you made me aware of and made the Downtown Business Association aware of. And I want to thank you personally for that.
You're welcome.
And so on. I think, as Councillor Lee said, we're bringing in more pay stations. And we're improving the technology for those folks who work with technology and can work with technology. One thing I didn't know, about this, and it struck me this morning as I was walking over, is that there are no O's. There are no O's, the letter O, in the license plates in Alberta. Where there is an O, it's actually a 0. So when you punch that into your phone, this is what was creating the ticketing.
I had no idea.
Nor did
Who knew?
I'll say I didn't.
Who knew?
I'll say I didn't know that. Even a personalized plate with an O is actually a 0. It's not an O. But people will punch it in as an O, and that was creating some tickets. Huge is right, and so on. So when Councillor Lee talks about the technology and the ability to adapt to it, I don't think many of us realized, including the city. I think we discovered over time that one of the reasons why people with zeros and O's in their license plates are getting tickets is that there's no O in an Alberta license plate. So a little piece of trivia. On to the Economic Development Committee now. It's a great question as well. So I'll say economic development is a driver, to state the very obvious, of the economies of many cities, many provinces, and so on. And that Red Deer's no different. But what we decided to do as a council, and certainly one of the goals that I had as mayor when I was elected, was to look at ways that we could more integrate ourselves into the community. And economic development was one of the principal planks of that. So how do we be better in economic development as a city, corporately, not just the City Hall, but the city overall? It meant bringing more partners to the table, more voices to the table to help us come up with a strategy that promoted Red Deer as the place to come and live, work, have a successful business, all those good things. So it became very much an opportunity for us to talk to people like the Chamber of Commerce, for example, like RDP, like the development community. We spoke of the development community, bring those people to the table. So a committee was formed of citizens. It was amazing. We had 12 spots on that committee. We had over 90 people apply for 12 spots. That's how much the community really embraced the idea of getting into a communal economic development strategy. So it's exciting work. It started in February, I'm going to say maybe January. It's wrapping up in June. The committee came to council on Tuesday, just a few days ago, and with some early recommendations that it be a bit of a standalone governing body to do economic development. To put that in context, the economic development body now exists at City Hall. There's only one, although businesses and the chamber and so on have pieces of it, there is now a need for a community overall governance piece here. So it makes for a very exciting opportunity. You're going to see some changes now in the way that we roll out economic development. You're going to see some changes on how Red Deer is promoted. The response to opportunities, I think, will be a lot faster, with a community committee. I'll say personally, I'm quite excited by it. Who knows? I may have some function with it. God knows. In the next year or two, we'll see how that goes. But I think it's a tremendous opportunity for us.
That sounds very positive. Yesterday, the council received reports regarding backyard suites, including recommendations from the Municipal Planning Commission. Councillor, what prompted this review and what changes are being considered?
Well, again, this comes from the principle of how do we best grow Red Deer. And I think the recommendations of MTC, because they're in a position to see, they're charged with looking at the development authority of the city. So they're looking at things like how do we create workable setbacks? How do we look at how buildings are designed? What heights and architectural designs are built for neighborhoods? The city focuses on this quite a bit. In fact, there's a few neighborhoods in the city, what come to mind, and maybe the mayor can help me out here, Waskesiu, Parkvale, that have specific character statements. And those are important because what that says is Red Deerians on a whole value where and how their neighborhoods grow, what they look like, and ultimately how they're developed. So that's what I think came to council. The principal question behind that is really MPC as an advisory body to council saying, listen, we're hearing this a lot. We need to bring this to the attention of council so we get a more generalized overview of all council's perspective, because we represent the people. So we need to know and hear that because we're the ones talking to the people in the neighborhoods, in the grocery stores, in the schools, and as you navigate through the community. So that was the process. And I mean, I think it's a good process because it then allows us to look at programs that are coming down from the government. You'll notice during that meeting, there were things that were talked about and referred to in terms of how do we build housing best and how do we best access grant funding from other orders of government or federal government. And those have to be just thrown into the mix, and it becomes quite complex because you're looking at how the biggest document in the city of Red Deer in terms of a bylaw, our land use bylaw, is thick. And how do we really translate that and distill that into something really relatable to our neighborhoods and meeting the desires of the neighborhoods and why they were built the way they were, but knowing that the city has to advance, again, to what I spoke to earlier, and grow in a good way. So I think that's really what MPC was trying to do when they brought those points. There was 9 key points that they brought, and I believe council focused in on 4 of those points to explore. It's not over because guess what? As part of our public life and as part of our process, we always allow the community to come and talk about in public hearings. So I encourage them to do that. And there will be a public hearing on this because the ultimate decisions will be around June 23rd in terms of how those fit, or maybe even a different meeting. Who knows? But it's a progression.
Very good.
Thank you.
How about your take on that, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I think Councillor Lee covered a lot of ground there, and I appreciate that. I chair MPC, so I'm the chair of municipal planning. So Councillor Lee, wouldn't have the same perspective as the chair would. So the challenge in backyard suites is actually fairly simple. Backyard suites under the new land use bylaw. Councillor Lee mentioned the land use bylaw. Under the new land use bylaw, backyard suites are permitted across the city. They're permitted in every neighborhood across the city. The challenge is this. The site coverage, what's called site coverage, in other words, your lot size is restricted to 60%. A backyard suite can occupy 60% of your lot size no more. And a backyard suite can only be up to 75% of the square footage of your home. So there were two triggers around that. 60% of the lot, you can imagine your store this morning being on a particular lot, and 75% of the size of your dwelling. Now, normally, and I say normally, that works across the city. Normally, except for neighborhoods with large lots and tiny homes. So you have tiny homes in Parkville.
It's a problem.
It's quite a problem. You have tiny homes in Parkville. You have tiny homes in Waskesiu. You know, you have tiny homes in Grandview, Mount View. You know, the traditionally older neighborhoods of the city. So we had a couple of applications come to MPC, come to municipal planning, from Parkville, tiny homes, and the variances, so in other words, the exceptions to the rule, were in one case 300% of a variance, and in another case 100% of a variance. It became very obvious to MPC that unless we did something with backyard suites in older neighborhoods, we were going to get more and more of these cases, more and more neighbors upset, more and more people who wanted to develop upset. Nobody was winning here. So MPC went to council and said, do something around the regulations for backyard suites from a couple of perspectives. One, is 75% sensible in a neighborhood of tiny homes? Does it make sense at 75%? Does 60% make sense in a neighborhood of big lots? And in those tiny homes, typically they're, 12, 15, 16 feet high. And I'm using feet, 5 meters if you're, anyway, I'll say that. And some of these suites, backyard suites, are going to 3 stories or 30 feet high. So we had to do something, and Councillor Lee spoke very well about that. Council is going to ask administration to come back. I'm not sure if it would be June. I think you're right, Lawrence, when you say it might be a later meeting. I would say Q3, a quarter 3, I should say, which is July to October of this year that they'll come back. But if you're a resident of Parkville today, and you're living in an 800 square foot home, which is typical, down there, you are hoping that the regulations take into consideration the fact that this is typically a neighborhood of smaller homes, and these regulations just simply, in my view, don't work down there.
No.
So
Yeah, a lot of those principal residents are less than 1,000 square feet, which is,
Yes.
I'm reminded of that now when the mayor says
You don't want
that.
to take away the character of Red Deer.
this
That's
is
the
it, Celine.
character of Red Deer.
And you're not even cutting my hair now when you say
No.
that. But however, I will say I'm used to you having your opinion there, and I value it. But you don't want to take away from the character of these older neighborhoods,
Or the downtown core.
or the downtown core. I will say, I'm on a rant here, but Mrs. Johnson is an example. She lived in an older neighborhood in Calgary, who now finds itself in transition, and the houses going up around some of the typically 12, 13, 1,400 square foot homes are now 2,000, 2,200, 2,500, and they're not this way, they're this way, and so it's quite a challenge, and we want to try to avoid that here if we can. So it'll be interesting,
Very interesting.
to see
Yep.
how that goes. But I want to tell you, if you walk down the streets of Parkville today, you're going to get an earful, and you should get an earful because of the way the regulations are set up right now.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm pretty impressed with you coming to my barber shop, because I give you an earful every time you come in, and you keep coming for a haircut. It amazes me. But you have said, if you can't take the heat, Don't.
Yeah,
Don't go in the kitchen.
I mean, Celine, this is why we have such a relationship. Public life is you have to accept that there are challenges and that people, and they have every right. They pay the freight. Your taxes pay the freight. They make us go every day, and therefore, yeah, you have to be able to say, hey, I care. Etc. Right, and Councillor Lee is no different. We're both from the class of 2013 here, and we've been together for 12 years.
Seems like
so on.
longer.
Well, some days,
Yeah.
not today.
Not long enough.
And that kind of thing. So
That's a long time.
that's a long time. Anyway, we're off script. I'm thinking we're off script.
Yeah.
Let's get back on script, Celine.
Yesterday, the council reaffirmed its commitment to the Future Indigenous Culture Center through a phased budget approach. Mayor, what are the details of this funding plan, and how does it align with our community community engagement efforts?
Yeah, thank you. Where do you begin on a question like that? I'll just say when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission came into the public view in 2015, Council was quick at the time to endorse its recommendations, five of which applied directly to municipalities. Others and the rest of the recommendations, there were 95 of them, applied to federal governments, applied to provincial governments, and to school boards, if you will, other governing agencies, things like that. In the ones that we adopted the whole report firstly as a way of reconciliation, and the other 5 were directly that municipalities would engage with the Indigenous community around opportunities for cultural expression, cultural education, ceremony, teaching, those kinds of things. And for years, it was aspirational in the Indigenous community to be able to have a culture center, to be able to have a place where Indigenous people could feel free to express themselves and reignite the pride that generations took away from them, to basically a chance to rediscover, who you are. Carolyn and I, come from Newfoundland, and so there's a culture in Newfoundland that we have been born into and lived into and so on, and it's precious to us. I say to people, if you can imagine how your own personal identity was taken away for the last 150, 200 years, what a challenge it is to restore that, and so on. So the Culture Center is an opportunity and a vision and a dream for many to reestablish that. So the funding itself is in phases. So we have a $50,000 allotment for this year for planning and consultation, all those good things. And this will be an Indigenous-led initiative. Next year, we have $250,000 set aside for architectural drawings, engineering, all of those kinds of things. And then in the third year, 2027, we have $4 million set aside for the actual building itself. Now, can we do something with that? We'll discover that as we continue to engage. But the opportunity is also there that the provincial government would come in on an equal basis with us to take that $4 million to $8 million, and the federal government could also come in and partner with us to take that $4 million, another $4 million, so that this could be a $12 million project, that we look at. It's in its infancy, but what's driving it right now is the hope that this can become a reality by 2027.
That's really awesome. That makes my heart happy. My daughter is Cree, and that makes me so happy. That makes me so happy. Council approved the 2025 property tax rate bylaw, including a 10.33% increase for residential properties. Councillor, Can you explain the factors leading to the decision and its implications to us tax-paying residents?
Well, do you have about 6 hours? My haircut would not take 6 hours, I'll tell you that.
No, it would not.
But that's the age-old question. And the way we look at taxes, is the community, our residents expect a certain level of service to be delivered. Those services don't really, in a general way, get cheaper over time. They go with inflation, they move up. Cities look at circumstances, a lot of circumstances, whether it was in the past with a pandemic, or whether it's in the now with inflation, whether it's supply of goods or however. So taxation, what we do, and it's a core responsibility of council, and one that I feel this council has absolutely shone in terms of how they provide their perspectives into where council goes. Some councillors would want 0%. Some councillors would want exactly what we're doing on a cost recovery basis. This council representation of the 10.33 is a culmination. It isn't a snapshot in time. This happens over years of what the city traditionally used to do, and it was to soften the blow, to smooth the curve, to smooth the kind of the up and down, the volatility of the circumstances of how we deliver and pay for services on behalf of our residents. So there were, if you recall, years of lesser or zero tax increases for our residents. You have to pay the piper at some point. You have to be able to not draw on reserves. And that was a financial lever that past councils, and hey, listen, I was involved in there, Mayor was as well, that we, for a number of reasons, and again, I say 6 hours of debate or discussion or giving you context of why those decisions are made. But those are the times that we have to really focus and sharpen the pencil and see what's more important. Is it simply a fiscal decision to set a rate for something that's coming? If it was for garbage or water or electrical utility, we could absolutely do that. But we have to consider the community as a whole. There's so many other pressures, day-to-day pressures of affordability, of how we ensure we're protecting the sustainability of the city and its assets that are moving forward. So taxation, it's a big topic. I wouldn't want to talk about it over your Easter dinner or your summer vacation, because it would probably just take all day in the room. But I believe, and I truly believe this, that the decisions that we made this year in terms of leveling out, not being the first council budget that isn't reliant on pulling of reserves to enable and really give a more accurate determination of the cost of services that our residents are getting, is well served. Because now we focus on that. And guess what? In the future, as all good stewards of financial resources should do, look at building a sustainable contribution to a reserve going forward, which councils of the past have tried to do. So if you wanted something in your community, like an Indigenous center, a cultural center, if I say it, I don't want to get too involved, into capital infrastructure that's recreation amenities, those sorts of things. You have to be able to plan it in a way that doesn't say, cities can't just come and write a check for $100 million, $50 million. Has to come on the backs of, or in a revenue stream that allows for that to be done in a way that isn't a shock to the community. So that's what our tax rates are. I know this council is focused on righting the ship. So absolutely, I think this was a course correction. I would absolutely anticipate that isn't the norm. We have to bring it down now to a level where we're really doing our fiscal accounts in order and budgeting for our future in a way that lessens the burden of future tax generations.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Okay, good. Well, you
does.
run a business.
It does,
So you
and
actually
yes.
see that entrepreneurs, thank you for that, Celine. Entrepreneurs understand that principle because in a business plan or a business model, you have to do that before you even do the first thing about turning a light switch on or hiring staff or you need that planning perspective. So, yeah.
The business improvement area tax rate also was approved. Mayor, how do you support the Downtown Business Association's initiatives? And what benefits can downtown business expect to see?
Yeah, it's a great question because there is tension in the downtown versus other parts of the city when you're here. And you know, I came to Red Deer in '96, Celine, and you know, it's kind of funny. We were only separated by about a half a block. I was at the Scotiabank on the corner there for all those years until I went to council. And I heard from lots of businesses, am I getting value from the Downtown Business Association? And I've been a big supporter of the DBA for all the years that I've been here. I often compare it to a business in a shopping mall that has to pay common area costs, with their rent and so on, which include promotion and beautification and all of those things, often at a multiple far higher than the tax rate that the DBA is charging. It's unfortunate sometimes that factors in the downtown, meaning less use of less traffic and that kind of thing, are affecting businesses far more than a DBA rate or downtown business rate. So the downtown business budget came to us back in December or so, and then the bylaw hit us just a few days ago. Part of that bylaw was what I'll call in simplistic terms, the non-ability to collect about $30,000 of taxes that people had either moved out of the downtown or had stopped paying for. So council decided to take that and this year to absorb it from a different reserve, the operating reserve, and so on, to keep the taxation rate at about, what, Lawrence, 656, 660, somewhere, 6.6%, somewhere in there, somewhere in that range, rather than it be about double that. So we were able to cut the tax rate in half. The bigger picture is, where does the whole BIA go, the whole business improvement tax? And you sit right in the heart of downtown, right across from the DBA. So you're in that district and that kind of thing. In the next couple of months, the committee that's looking at that will come to council with some recommendations. And council itself, through Councillor Lee, made a motion that the city consider disbanding, removing, eliminating the whole idea of a BIA, of a business improvement district, the way it operates today. So there's changes coming. It's important to differentiate between BIA, which is a business improvement area, and the Downtown Business Association. Yeah, they're totally separate. The DBA is funded by the, quote, BIA. They don't tax people, like the DBA doesn't tax people, and so on. So that's important, and sometimes people, sort of muddle them up once in a while, which takes away sometimes for the great work the DBA, continues to do. There's no bigger supporter of the downtown than the Downtown Business Association, but there are changes coming.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be great to see
I know it will.
what's happening.
I know it will. You were very enthusiastic. I want to thank Councillor Lee personally for his leadership on this. He has been quite a strong advocate for reform on the BIA. So thank you, Lawrence, for all your work there. And so look forward to some changes.
Excellent. And was there anything else in the...
I just have one thing. I know we've been on the air a long time. It's all good. Well, two things. first of all, come down to the
Yes.
to the barbershop.
Yay.
And
We
and
would love to
mingle,
see new
mingle in the ambiance. I'll say it's a treat for me every 30 days, and all of that kind of thing. One of the things that strikes me about the premises, Celine, and you know we're sort of in the back room this morning, but one of the things that strikes me about the premises is some of the sayings on the wall, and some of the little, you know, the ambiance is just amazing. So as we were filming this morning, I looked up here, and I'm going to quote the sign, which says, "Never laugh at your wife's choices. You're one of them." So, Red Deer, this is Mayor Ken saying, never laugh at your wife's choices because you're one of them. And I'm sure it applies to husbands as well. Now, ladies out there, pay attention. It's both of them. You know, it's certainly a reminder to keep our humility, to keep our humanity, to keep understanding that we're all in this together. And what a treat it's been this morning, Celine. This has been great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much for coming. Everybody be kind, and we would love to see you.
Well said,
Cheers.
for sure. All right, this is Mayor Ken signing off with Deputy Mayor Lawrence. We'll see you in a couple more weeks for another After Council recap. Thank you.